Hello. Thank you for watching this webinar on legacy mapping for nurses. Uh, I'm just going to quickly go through legacy mapping as explained and outlined by this article that was published in Nursing Outlook and Science Direct. Creating a career legacy map to help ensure meaningful work in nursing. And why we're talking about this is in a number of our discussions within the nursing field and within academia, there's been a great deal of interest around legacy mapping and what it's offering for the nursing profession, and trying to help explain to the nursing profession and better understand why they're passionate about being in the within the profession, and to try and manage both the passion of being a nurse and the intricacies and complexity and challenges of the career as a whole. And really, the beauty of the message of this journal by these many experts in nursing was to try and find balance between institutional workplace goals and nurses' individual career goals, and to better articulate that so that it can be managed better within the profession to provide more meaning and fulfillment in the profession of nursing, and to help try and mitigate many of the challenges that nurses find in their profession, and some of the issues that's very particular in that industry around attrition and being able to retain people within the industry. And we're going to talk about this article, this journal, about legacy mapping for nursing within the context of also digital portfolios and the concept of the lifelong learning record. We're Acadiate is a digital portfolio platform. We're used within many university programs, including nursing programs, to supplement discussions around career, but also reflective learning and managing that within an academic environment. But the beauty of it is, because students actually own their account and the contents for life, they can create a lifelong learning record. And so it's interesting to talk about legacy mapping for nursing within the context of this and lifelong learning, and hopefully provide a little bit more inspirational thought around how legacy mapping can be more easily implemented and deployed in within academic environments, but also within hospital environments. So just to get started as to what legacy mapping is, it's they describe it as a self-use career guidance tool for nurses, which is fascinating for us because we are focused on providing structured career guidance to students or individuals early in their career, to try and find kind of the linkages between their career and branding and making better decisions around their career. And so it's interesting how they articulate as a tool that this is also how to drive better conversations between the individual and with their team leader. And it's ultimately about how to better articulate what they want to achieve in their career and the individual steps around credentialing and maintaining themselves, but also growing, and articulating that to their team leader to make sure that they get the proper resources to execute that and to keep their career on the rails and moving forward and growing, and become a value-added member of the team and the profession. So, they articulate. So just kind of a little bit breaking it down a little bit further, They use the term career, which is, promote developing a career plan. So this concept of a plan to guide the careers of nurses. And it's about, it's interesting, drive the intended career outcome. So it's to provide more of a structured approach and clarity around that, and provide a little bit more certainty and a little bit more guidance around that, so that nurses can have that structure and forethought to make sure that they know where they're going. Legacy, so they use this term legacy. It's focused about being better in one's job. And it's about being better in one's job based upon your personal efforts and your own efficacy, and how to experience meaning in that process. Probably one of the unique aspects of nursing is, what drives nurses. It's such a tough, challenging profession to be in, is that one of the aspects of a good nurse is that they're really driven by wanting to help people and find meaning in the job. It's more than just a career making more money and progressing. It's about helping people, and so they try and bring this all together. And then they use the term MAP, which is a fascinating term because it's about how to provide a concrete visual guide and of moving towards a particular intended career outcomes. And so that's a fascinating discussion, and it's about kind of how to articulate it, but also how to visualize it. A map is a visualization. And by better visualizing it, you can actually start identifying gaps and maybe even barriers, and maybe see insight that you might not have seen without that type of discussion and visualization. So again, in nursing is a very challenging professional paradigm. It's emotionally challenging, and nurses must find meaning in their professions for them to ultimately stay in the profession, to grow and to lead. And that's really the foundation of this work. It's interesting, the one quote that they include in it is from John F. Kennedy that says, efforts and courage are not enough without purpose and direction. And I think that has a lot of pertinence for the nursing career. So again, a very fascinating discussion within it. So why is nursing career development so important? Well, as they explain, it's fundamental in their eyes, to the advancement of healthcare management and retention of healthcare professionals. So this is very much about retention of healthcare professionals. So very important in my eyes. And if you look at some of the stats out there, nursing has very high attrition rates. 18% of new nursing graduates leave their first job or the profession as a whole within the first year, which is actually a little sad. In fact, some stats show that a third of all new graduates change jobs or leave the profession within the first 2 years, which is not good use of the resources within our society and this very important profession. Another stat is a third of all nurses in the U.S. are expected to retire over the next 5 to 10 years, which is why there's such a high nursing vacancy rate in the U.S., 8%. And so it's interesting that there's a feeling that there's connectivity between these very high attrition rates and career development for nursing. And if you add in there, the cost of replacing a clinical nurse within a hospital system is very punitive, $40,000 to $64,000 per hire in a profession of 2 million, over 2 million nurses within the U.S. the cost of turnover and attrition is dramatic for this industry. So the ability to reduce that is important, and feel there's a very strong linkage between career development and attrition rates. And it was actually interesting. This might also be partly attributed to low investment in career development within nursing programs. Just recently did a survey of deans and representatives of nursing programs in the U.S., actually sampling group of around 5% of all nursing programs. And one of the things we found out is that their investment in student career development is very low, actually. 7% in the last 3 years. 7% of programs made any investment in this area. Partly because of they, in their minds, they don't see this as a challenging space. In fact, only 3% it was student employability was challenging, probably because the high vacancy rates, and it's relatively easy to find a job per se, maybe not a good job, but to find a job, so they don't feel that it's something that they necessarily have to invest in or see as a problem. Although when you talk about student retention rates within nursing programs, then they actually see a problem. Almost 60% see this as a challenge or somewhat of a challenge. So there's maybe some disconnects there, and that's why this is an important discussion. It's because it's a very mentally challenging profession. And as they say, I quote, nurses need constant reassurance to find meaning in their work. And therefore, career development and career discussions is critical in this profession. Even quote from Donner and Wheeler, who did an in-depth study around this, is they consider it's critical to retaining mid-career nurses in the nursing discipline. So we feel that there's a very strong connectivity between career development and retention, and so greater planning around this and management within the profession is critical to resolving these very high attrition rates. So, what is creating a legacy map? And really, it's about separation of achieving one's work goals. In other words, institutionally, when you're within an institution, what are those working level goals that you have related to your career or clinical ladders for how to get ahead, and through the different steps within kind of the hard credentialing processes of the career, but also about splitting out and recognizing that it's also about finding meaning and fulfillment in your job, and also addressing that side of it, that soft side around passion of why you go through the challenges of this career and fight through, and the intention of making a positive difference in the lives of others, which is a common thread within the nursing profession. So they structure it around getting started through exercises. And the first step is creating a brief autobiography, a self-reflective exercise of who you are, and articulating it and documenting it, and being able to share it with others. And and then going through the exercise of what they call self-discovery workshops, which are to inspire and organize their thoughts around their career and what they want to do in the short term, medium term, and the long term, and to articulate that into branding, and also into goals over those different periods of time, to provide structure and guidance and clarity around where they're going. And then from that, you can create your legacy map. And as you can see, legacy map is a visualization. stepping stone, a visualization of what steps you'll take from where you are to where you want to go to achieve your legacy. So it's very much a visual exercise, and we'll get a little bit more into that. And so, what is the legacy map template? And it starts with asking two key questions. It's actually quite a straightforward exercise. It's not a difficult exercise. And it's really asking the first question: what do you want to be better in nursing? What, if you look within the nursing profession, where do you see shortcomings? What do you feel should be better? And what you can do in your own efforts to achieve that. So it's kind of connecting with kind of those larger macro trends or issues within the hospital system or within your department, and what can you do to better that. And then maybe a little bit thinking in the wider aspect of what you would like to be best be known for by others. And that's a more esoteric kind of larger goal, but that's why this is called legacy. Where you can look back on your career at a certain point of time or at a certain junction within your career and look back and say, okay, what have I achieved? What have I contributed? And it's really trying to ask those questions, and it's about asking those questions constantly, and based upon that, that can drive particular goals that will drive you and give you something you can strive for and attain, and therefore grow. And particularly, and the power of this is that in fact this is a natural process of how to drive people into leadership roles, by giving them a little bit more guidance of what it takes in a more stepped way and to reach and aspire to bigger and better things. And so they explain, start it with a skeleton template, which is, as we just talked, the declared legacy, which is kind of where you want to wind up, and then listing your current contributing activities, of what you're actually doing right now, working towards it, and then asking you, okay, what are you doing now? Then what are the next steps? What are the future planned steps? And map that out, visually map that out, and connect with what you're doing right now with those future steps to achieve that goal, and visualize it, and really ask hard questions. But because you're documenting it, you can also share it and get input from others, from your team leader, from the team, from mentors, from preceptors, from people around you, and really challenge it and make sure that it's sound, and that it's something you're willing to invest in and that you really want to achieve it. Because the other side of it is you should also be mapping in here all of the other activities you're doing, because it's something we say in career development. You also have to understand some of the other things you're doing. Are they noise? Are they directly related to where you want to go? And it's about creating stronger messages about who you are and communicating it to others to be promoted. And it comes from clarity of knowing who you are, what you want to do, and where you want to go. In fact, it's what recruiters often describe as self-awareness. They're looking for individuals, and they see individuals with stronger maturity who have a stronger self-awareness. So this exercise actually has a lot of parallels in other HR concepts. One of the most powerful is self-awareness. And this is an example here of a legacy map, actually, as presented, documented within our platform, within a showcase digital portfolio. And you can see it's a very visual exercise. So you need a strong graphical interface to document this and to capture it. And in this particular case, they they differentiate between the different steps and concepts, where those that you've achieved are the yellow highlighted items. Those that you're planning to do or in the process of doing are have a frame around them, have a square around them, but they're white. And then those without kind of that frame is what you're proposing or thinking of doing it. So it's a framework to help you organize and visualize what you're actually doing and create an actual plan that you can implement and share ultimately with your team leader, because it's about getting resources from them and guidance and support to achieve this. Another example that they use is this is a legacy map used for leadership, how to get promotion within a hospital system. And kind of the quality control process that they articulate and can show to others. So it's a fascinating concept, and when you really think about it, it's how to provide structure and drive greater action in a nurse's career and to drive better career outcomes. It's a very sound process, and it helps to simplify but also visualize. Visualization is a very important part of this because you can identify gaps easier when you see it in a very graphical form. It's easier to communicate with others and for them to point out exactly what you're doing and to connect and identify where you were, where you are now, and the next steps. And maybe just as importantly, as they articulate, is identify gaps. Is there conflicts between different legacies that you have, or the different steps, and if there's any barriers, identify. It makes it clear what those barriers are, but also better identify what resources you need to achieve them in credentializing or maintaining credentials or moving in certain directions. And so they also articulate that it's about driving regular review, getting into the process, regular reviews with your preceptor, your mentors, your team leader, with the team, and regularly updating it and really reflecting on what you've achieved and looking at how it can be modified and how this can be integrated into the annual performance review process. In fact, it's about connecting career and workplace outcomes, which is fascinating because this process can be started at a very early stage in a nurse's career. In fact, there's a role for within academia to start this exercise so that when they graduate out of their undergraduate or the master's programs, that they can better articulate and show stronger self-awareness of what their goals are, and fit more easily into the hospital system. Now, this is part of the power of the magnet-based hospital systems is the quality control processes and better managing those conversations between nurses and team leaders to maintain quality control processes. So we feel this is legacy mapping is something that can easily be implemented and have great deal of benefits within the academic environment. So how can Acadiate play a role? Well, in clarification, one of the challenges of legacy mapping is how to manage it, how to deploy it. And you really need a centralized vehicle to store, organize, and maintain it. And that's where Acadiate can play a role. We have a very strong graphical interface because we are a digital portfolio functionality. So we can support the digital portfolios, but also the short bio functionality. And as I was saying at the very beginning, the concept of the lifelong learning record. The beauty of our platform is that, through your academic career, all your academic work can be stored on the platform. Actually, in the universities we're in, the programs encourage students as they graduate to download all of their academic material onto Acadiate so that they have a lifelong record that they can refer to, where the challenges with the LMS system is 3 months after they graduate, they close it down and they delete everything. So that's part of the power of our platform, is you have it for life. So you can maintain this material over your entire life, and it can grow with you into each of the stages, whether in academia, but also in the hospital system. In fact, we also have a particular tool and platform or version that is the faculty portfolio, which supports teaching dossiers and research dossiers. Guidance and support. We have a lot of self-discovery workshops in that sense. We have a lot of learning resources and live webinars to support and inspire and to push individuals on a regular basis to really do some self-reflective thinking about their career and where they should be going, and driving a self-reflective practice in the exercise. We are cloud-based, so within the institutions that use us, we actually have this extra layer, which is this directory function, where you can share these your showcases or bios as a group to an academic or to mentors who can review it. So that kind of sharing, that community structure can be very powerful for users on our system. We actually have a module, a mentorship module, that automates schools to pair students with peers or with alumni to drive those discussions around career and understanding what you want to do with your career in those exploratory discussions. And so again, this is also about ownership for life and driving that lifelong learning record. So what does this kind of look like? It's interesting. We really feel there's strong connectivity between legacy mapping and the creation of this lifelong learning record, and that it starts in early in one's career, as a student and undergraduate in your clinical work. And so if you really break it down, the autobiographical that's where the starting point, very strongly supported within the platform, and discovery workshops, having those support material, learning resources to drive those discussions and drive creating the legacy map and drive those goals, and really start articulating, the current activities that nurses are doing, and then what are the planned steps. Really ask them hard and get them into a regular thought process. Okay, next step, and what are the different activities, and how each of those activities are working towards those declared legacies. And everything that I'm doing within the classroom and my volunteer work, how I'm collecting that, articulating it as a part of a branding exercise and self-awareness exercise for communicating to others who I am and where I want to go, and sharing it in a meaningful manner that drives you throughout your career. One of the aspects of all careers, but particularly in nursing, is that once you graduate, it doesn't really end. It's about continuing education, credentialing, just-in-time learning, micro-learning, and what you're accumulating within the hospital system through your work experiences, but also academically, collecting that, massaging and being able to present it to team members and to your team leader about how you're developing, and communicating that as you want to grow into leadership roles, and how that can be incorporated into the review process within your work environment to become a team leader, and eventually, hopefully, going on into higher levels of leadership education, and how you can use this material to promote yourself and communicate to others of your leadership achievements, so that you do go into these higher level positions of leadership within the industry, and hopefully eventually into education and giving back in the education field. So it's a very powerful platform, and actually works in very closely with the concepts around legacy mapping and creating this lifelong learning record to help document and communicate back to individuals of, are they of what their legacy should be, and whether they're achieving it. So fascinating discussion around legacy mapping, and we just really wanted to break it down, understand it, and communicate that, and show that how it can be easily executed within our platform.